Welcome to the New York City Bar Association podcast. Opinions expressed are those of the speakers and not necessarily of the city bar.
My name is Eddie Hecht. I'm an attorney with the law firm of Smith, Gambrell, and Russell here in New York. I'm a commercial litigator, and I've had the honor of speaking with Judge Frank Perry about the work that he's been doing in the mental hygiene realm. And I'm really honored and appreciate his making himself available to speak on this podcast and shed some light on the work that he's been doing. So, Judge Perry, thank you for joining me.
Thank you for having me. It's been my honor to chat with you before today, too.
Great. So, just can you describe a little bit your professional background and starting with early on in your career and then how you've ended up where you are now?
Well, it's kind of circuitous because I never wanted to be a lawyer. I wanted to go into broadcast journalism when I was much younger. And my advisor told me that I should go into law because he felt I talked too much in class. That would really help me out. So I followed his advice and went to law school, GW in Washington, D.C. Then I graduated and came to New York to work for a very large firm, Wilson Elser, for 6 years. And I enjoyed that, where we were given immediate litigation experience. I mean, we were thrust into the courthouses back in the 1980s. I graduated law school in 1986, long before you were born, young man. So I remember what the old days were like. And then while doing a trial here in Manhattan, one of the judge's court attorneys said that the appellate term first department was looking for an attorney. So I interviewed for that job and left Wilson and came to the court system back in 1990. So I was with the appellate term from 1990 until 2001. During that summer, I received what they call is the call to religion. So I left my job on a sabbatical here in the court system and went to Union Theological Seminary to get my Master's of Divinity from Union, which I received. Then after that, I came back to the court system to work for one of my buddies, Peter Moulton, who had just gotten elected to civil court. I worked for Peter until I became a civil court judge. He thrust me, unbeknownst to me, to do a lot of judge stuff when I was just a court attorney to prepare me. So I blame and welcome and very happy for Peter. So since then, I started out in the family court as a judge in Brooklyn. I went there voluntarily. Thank you, Frank Fisher. You were wonderful. And then I came back to Manhattan where I was elected at civil court. And in 2019, I became a Supreme Court judge.
Okay. And in your role as Supreme Court judge, what kind of cases, like the general assignment part?
I did everything. Yes, I did IAS part. I did everything from construction malpractice to medical malpractice to breach of contract to every violation you could possibly imagine. And that really prepared me for this particular job. All of that prepared me for this job, especially my going to the seminary in conjunction with my being a lawyer. Helped me get to this place.
So why don't you just talk a little bit about the place you are now and how you went from a Supreme Court judge to doing what you do now?
I don't know the machinations of the powers that be because things that they do are done behind closed doors. But I know that I was asked to do this part. I was very hesitant at first because judges were only given this part for 1 week per year. There hadn't been a consistent judge in Manhattan for quite a long time. So I did this part for 1 week every year. I was very nervous about the power one had over another individual.
And let me just stop you there, because what we're talking about now is when you're saying this part, you're talking about the mental hygiene part?
Yes. The mental health and hygiene part where I'm working now, we cover the hospitals in Manhattan that have psychiatric wards and facilities for people who are ill. And you come to see me because if you are in a particular division or part of the hospital and you'd like to see a judge within the 72 hours that you're there, you can petition the court to do that. See a judge to determine whether you stay or are released from the hospital. And or if the hospital is suggesting that you take a particular medication that you don't want to take, you could also petition the judge to say whether you should take that or not. You all work together with the inmate, with the patient, with a psychiatrist in the hospital, and with any other witnesses that may appear.
So the petition, if I heard you correctly, does that have to be brought within the first 72 hours that a patient's admitted into a hospital?
Usually, yes. Some people go in because they don't know why they're there. A relative might ask them to be admitted, or they may come under another particular ordinance. But most people who are there, they are told that within 72 hours, you have to ask the judge to be released.
Oh, so they get notice provided to them when they are admitted?
Yes, usually they do, yes.
And then how long, if they don't petition the court within that 72 hours, I mean, how long, how is it determined, the length of their stay? Who determines it, and how is it determined?
Well, without me, the doctor determines it.
Okay.
And most doctors and hospitals don't want to keep people for a very long time. They want to evaluate them, see that they're properly cared for, and give them the best medications and counseling. Then they leave to go back to their homes and work.
You have like a sense of generally like the average stay of a mental health patient under the direction of a doctor?
It depends on what they're displaying to the doctor, how they're presenting to the emergency room, what they say to the doctor. It really depends, but it's not a very long stay. Some people just go in for a few days or a week, perhaps. It's probably 5 or 6 days, and that's over. They come home.
So if there's like longer term care needed, like months at a time, they get sent somewhere else?
They can petition, the doctor can petition the court to have them sent to a state hospital or another facility. And then they can be kept for a long time. I also work with the hospitals on Ward Island, the forensic facilities, the house inmates from Rikers Island and other places. So I get to determine whether they stay in their particular facilities or not.
Okay, so your jurisdiction is only New York City mental health hospitals in New York County, right?
Or hospitals that have mental health facilities, like Bellevue has a mental health ward. Other hospitals have mental health wards. But yes, I'm in Manhattan because I have colleagues in Brooklyn who do the same thing, and colleagues in Manhattan who handle criminal cases. I don't do criminal, I only do civil cases.
Right. I'm actually very interested about hearing more about how you got to where you are and how you started this. But before we get into that, I think maybe it would be helpful just to talk a little bit more about the substance of the mental health hearings and how those work, just to get a better idea of the work that you're actually doing. So why don't you sort of walk me through a patient petitions within 72 hours to have a hearing with you? What happens?
Well, normally before that, they are assigned an attorney if they don't have one already. We have the mental health legal service that will provide the patient with legal advice for free. So they don't have to worry about getting a lawyer to help them out. These lawyers are very equipped. They know the law. They're very fair. So they're there to assist you in how you should go forward. So you make a petition and you come before the court. The hospital will be represented by an attorney, and the patient will be represented by an attorney. And they make your petition for you. The hospital will call the doctor first. The doctor will ascertain and outline how long you've been there, what your symptoms are, what you've been saying, how you've been engaging the rest of the hospital, and what you want to do. Then the patient will counter what the doctor said. Sometimes they're diametrically opposed. Sometimes it's just a little nuance between what the hospital says and what the doctor says. And everyone will testify. Sometimes the patient will bring in other people, like their family members or coworkers, to testify on their behalf. Sometimes not. And ultimately, it's my decision whether you stay in the hospital for the time that the doctor has prescribed. Sometimes I will alter that myself. The doctor might say, I want you in for the next 2 weeks, and I'll find that person doesn't need to be in the hospital for 2 weeks, just another 3 or 4 days, and I'll be okay. Sometimes it's the opposite of that. Patient wants to stay until tomorrow, and the doctor says, I want him to stay for another 3 weeks, and I'll agree with the doctor.
Yeah,
The salespeople want to.
I'm curious to hear, too, about how sort of those determinations are made. But first, I think it'd be helpful in terms of procedure. So when the petition is made, is it like a written petition, how lengthy is it? How detailed is it? And does the hospital have a chance to put in a response before the hearing? Or does everything all sort of happen at once when the hearing is held?
Well, usually the hospital writes, there is a written petition that is submitted, and usually that is confirmed by two separate doctors. One doctor will make the application, and another doctor will go over that application and sign his or her name to it. And that will be delivered to the hospital. The hospital will look at that. And so it's formal, but sometimes it's not as formal as we might think because it's very truncated. The time is short. We don't have weeks to look over these petitions and submit, legal briefs over whether a patient should be there or not. So a lot of it is conformed to a place where the doctor knows, the doctor for the patient knows, the doctor for the hospital knows what's happening.
Okay, so the doctor is the one who actually writes the petition on behalf of the patient?
Yes. Doctor will write the petition on behalf of the hospital.
Okay.
Doctor will say, I've reviewed this patient's medical records, I've talked to the patient, and this is what I think should happen. The patient's given an opportunity to look all that over, and everyone comes together knowing what the other's possibly going to say.
Okay. That's helpful. So I gather it's very quick. The petition is submitted and then the hearing is held either that day or the day after?
As quickly as we can. I mean, we cover most of the hospital in Manhattan, so we don't have a lot of time.
And it's all virtual, right?
Yes, now it is because of the pandemic. We used to go to the hospitals every day.
So how many petitions were you having? I mean, I can imagine that must have been very difficult to hit every hospital that had a mental health facility in it and try to address all these petitions within a single day, right?
Yes, but not every hospital petitions. Yesterday I had 14 cases before me. Today I have 9. And some require interpreters. This will make the hearing go much longer. So we try to hit as many as we can. You've got
Right.
great clerks to do that.
And so you do have your own clerks?
Yes, I have a clerk.
And so now it's just you're the only one. So I guess let's just back up now and sort of get back to where we started. And you were saying how at first you went from the Supreme Court and you were doing once a week
Yes.
rotation. So yeah, kind of talk about that. That's interesting.
It's hard to think that you have this much, I don't want to say power, but this much influence over a person's well-being, because one thing you have to keep in mind, you're seeing everybody at the worst day of their lives. Nobody wants to be in this position that the patients are in, whether you're a doctor or a clerk or a nurse or a patient, nobody wants to be there. Most people don't understand the legalese that is the banter between lawyers and the judge. So it's really hard to engage that, but once you get a hold of that, you have to think about the individual. My focus is the person. Our court system is here to help those who cannot help themselves and to be as fair as we can with attorneys who know what they're doing. So there's a balance that has to be struck. And we try to strike that balance by listening as hard as I can to the doctor and to the patient. Because usually there is some sort of compromise. They haven't said it yet.
So you were around 2019, 2020, you were still a Supreme Court judge and you were doing this weekly rotation where you were introduced to this role. And so can you speak, was every Supreme Court judge basically assigned to a weekly rotation at that point?
Yes, they still are, except for my part. Because we get to do different kinds of there's ex parte law. We need an ex parte judge once in a while. We also need judges that do other kinds of hearings. And as we're working our way up the ladder, we all had to do arraignments in criminal court, even though we weren't elected criminal court judges. So all for our training and our honing our expertise.
So at some point you became the only full-time judge doing these sort of mental health hearings in New York City. Is that right?
Yes.
How did that happen? How did that come to be?
As I said earlier, I don't know what goes on behind closed doors. So I don't know what was mentioned, what was said, or what was not said, or whether I was the person that they wanted. I have no idea. All I know is that I was asked to do this, but I said, yes, I'll take it on. reluctantly, but I really realized that the longer I had this job, the much more I care about it, the much more I like it. I really love it because it really gives me an opportunity to breathe at the end of the day and know that I helped one of my neighbors with a problem that they could not do themselves.
I can imagine it's very powerful. So I think I'd be interested to hear about the process of the hearings a little bit more and how the hard decisions are made. So can you just walk me through at a high level the procedure in terms of who goes first, the patient or the hospital? And is it the patient's lawyer that does the speaking?
Let me just tell you, we walk,
Okay.
because I'm doing these hearings today. The case is called, parties enter the room. It's the hospital that goes first. The doctor is sworn in. Doctor gives the details of the patient and the patient's care. And the doctor gives his or her recommendation as to whether the patient should stay or be let go be let go with conditions or not. And the recommendation is taken in by the court. Then the patient is allowed to speak after the doctor has presented, and they present their part of what's going on. Their lawyer will introduce them and ask questions of them in relation to what the doctor has said. They will rest. We'll have redirect by the plaintiff, the hospital, and then the judge makes the decision from the bench.
So how do you make those tough calls where if there's a doctor who's advocating for a 3-week stay, and how do you determine that the stay should be shorter, and what sort of considerations go into that?
Well, there's no one rule. I wish there was. And I can't tell sometimes how I do it. If I do have a problem, I'm always able to take a pause, go offline, talk to my court attorney, talk to someone that I feel and that I trust with a decision. But most of the time, it's just looking at the folks and hearing what they have to say, really listening to them. Because a lot of our folks don't feel that they are really heard when they come to court. Someone's actually listening to what they have to say. And so I listen to them and we make a decision. Now, I have to say, very few people are happy with my decision. I have been called names that I would never ever say to anyone I didn't like. I mean, just horrible names and things thrown at me. Thank goodness I'm on the screen, but twice a week I go to a particular facility, see people in person if they request so. So I've had things thrown at me and people say some horrible things, but I'm doing the best I can to help you out. That's my job. I don't want you out there, living where you shouldn't be living. Not everybody wants to live in a home. Some people really want to live on the street. That's what they want. So I want you to be safe. I want you to be warm and well cared for and fed, no matter where you are, no matter where you choose to be. It's your choice.
I appreciate that. So is it fair to say it's a holistic approach where you're taking in information from the hospital, the doctor, the patient, and then are you also assessing demeanor of the patient at the hearing? And do you ever have to draw on precedent, any sort of prior decisions, or is it really more of a case-by-case basis?
Sometimes I look at prior decisions, but most of the time I don't. Because we have such a high value, I can't go back and say, let me look at this that happened in May of last year.
Yeah.
But what I like is the fact that we've all gotten to know each other in this part. So the attorneys kind of know where I'm going and they kind of talk to their clients and vice versa. So people kind of realize from the look on my face that you're going to stay in a little longer or you can get out today. But yes, I'm just looking out for their benefit.
Sure.
Because some people can't see it. They can't see the forest for the trees. They can't see that they have to stay in for 2 more days. That's all the doctor's asking. 2 more days for the doctor to elevate your medication to its efficacy. That's all. Some people don't want that. Some people want to stay. There's one guy I had a while ago who really wanted to stay because the food was good at a particular hospital and it was warm.
And how did you handle that?
I'm not going to say. Because he or she may be listening. Oh, he may be listening, yeah.
I appreciate that. Is it a case too where do you look at the patient's history, like medical history and history of either adhering to or not adhering to prescribed medication and so forth?
That usually comes from the hospital. The hospital will tell you The patient has a huge history of psychological problems. Patient has been in the hospital in and out of hospital for the past 6 times. They've been that they've needed medical care. So you'll know that. I don't have to read it. The doctors will present it. Or if it's a patient's first time, they're 23 or 24 years old, it's their first time being diagnosed with an illness. They have none. So you just have to vary the way you look at people and listen to what they're saying.
Does the public have access to these hearings?
Yes, we're open, but most people don't want to see them, and I can understand that. I wouldn't, on my off chance on a holiday, want to go and sit in one of these hearings because sometimes they're very devastating. Sometimes the things that are alleged or that people have admitted to doing are just awful. So,
are the decisions written decisions that are publicly available, or how does that work?
well, I don't write decisions down. They're all on the record. I deliver my decisions from the bench. And basically, they're the same for each particular illness or stay or how you want the patient directed. And you can order them from the court reporters.
And if the patient or the hospital disagrees, is there an ability to appeal?
Oh, yes.
Can you talk about that?
Yeah, I haven't had, that I know of, an appeal yet, but I've got a case where there was an appeal, where the trial judge did one thing, and the patient was sent to another facility. While the patient was at another facility, the appellate division had the patient sent back to his or her original facility. So there are changes that happen. I wasn't the judge on that case.
So I take it you make evidentiary rulings. Do the general rules of evidence apply?
Yes. So the rules of trial, I mean, everything applies. We even have some people who want to represent themselves because they think the lawyer does not know who they are, doesn't recognize their feelings. And I have to ask a lot of those folks, have you ever been to law school? Do you know what a stipulation is? Do you know how to introduce evidence? And lots of times people don't know how to do that, so they will defer to their assigned lawyer.
And the lawyers, there is this, I think you mentioned it before, but it's a city-funded legal group?
Mental Hygiene Legal Services.
Okay.
I cannot say now from where they get their money because I don't know what's going to happen. I have no idea what's happening with regards to the funding of anything now. But they worked very hard. They worked for a long time on patients' behalf, and they do a really good job. And so do the lawyers for the hospital. They're not given easy jobs either. These young people, I would say young because I think I'm young, but I'm not. The lawyers on both sides are really dedicated. They really are dedicated. They know what they're doing, and they must love it because they work very hard at it. And you can hear and feel themselves in what they say. And it's really great to work with these folks. They teach me a lot.
Do they have rotations too, or they're assigned a certain number of patients, so they have a certain number of hearings a day? How does that work? Do you know?
And I don't know. I think it's sort of like a DA. You go into the DA's office, you're assigned a certain particular part and what you do. I have no idea what the machinations of their representation are.
So you started your weekly rotation into this part in around 2019, 2020. Is that right? Or did I say that wrong?
Yeah, no, that's right.
Okay. And then when did you become the full-time mental hygiene judge in New York County?
It's 2023, January 2023.
Have you seen the process change over that period of time at all, other than going from in-person to virtual?
Well, we've kind of streamlined it because the rules used to kind of change maybe every week because you're a different judge. But now we've really begun to solidify some of the ways we like to have a part run. We tried to make it a little bit more efficient. The lawyers know what they're allowed to do, what they're not allowed to do, and how to quickly get something in or out. So it's much more streamlined now, which I like.
I think it sounds like it'd be a lot more streamlined and just a better way of doing things to have a full-time assigned judge like yourself, rather than have people once a week get familiar with the process. I think this sounds like a very good way to do things. Do you have, if you can speak on it, do you have any ways that you think that the process might be improved?
It's hard to say because the process moves just like our country moves. I mean, we don't know what's going to happen tomorrow. in Washington. We don't know what's going to happen today. I wish we didn't have this part. I wish we had a world where we could just resolve our decisions and our discussions in-house, but we don't have that. We need a third party to help us. And being that third party, I wish we had more time, more young people to handle all these cases. Because what I've seen is we have a lot more sickness now than we've had before. After COVID or during COVID, a lot of people just became more ill. So the focus is on mental health for good or for bad. But we need to recognize the humanity of the people who are sick. They need our help. A lot of our lawyers and judges need our help too. We all need to band together, but we will respond to what we are given in the best way we know how, recognizing the humanity of the people that come before us.
So you have seen, I was wondering that. So you have seen an uptick in the number of petitions requested post-COVID?
People are a little bit more vulnerable now that they were before COVID. Before COVID, we were taught that we could do anything. We didn't need anyone to help us. During COVID, we realized we couldn't do everything, and we did need our neighbors. Some people had a difficult time adjusting to that shift in life. And so we have a lot more young folks who are coming to us. We have a lot more people who are elderly, who lived in their homes and their apartments here for years. They did not know that next door neighbor. You got sick and needed some help. So we try to respond to what's given us every day.
What do you do if you're faced with a situation where there's a patient who you believe might be a danger to himself or others? And is it just a situation where you make a decision that he stay in the hospital longer, or is there other things that you can do to try to ensure that the situation is handled correctly?
That's one of the questions every attorney's asked, or they will give that information freely that their client is not a danger. And the hospital will say the client is a danger, and they'll make their representation as to why they believe that. So then I have to resolve who's right and kind of who's wrong, kind of. It just is so, it's like a lobster. You eat different pieces with different utensils, and some you dip in butter, some you don't. I mean, it's very malleable. We try to bring a compromise to it all, but we don't want folks that are really ill, whether they know it or not, to be on the streets alone, where they could not help themselves or hurt someone else.
Do you have anything that you would like to say, anything that you would like people to know that are listening to this podcast about the process, anything that they can do to help the process or shed light on it, or anything that can help you and the attorneys involved do the work that you all are doing in a more efficient or better or improved sort of way?
Wow. How much time do you have? One thing I think about all the time is that we don't talk to each other enough. There be our children we don't talk to, our parents, our aunts and uncles, our neighbors. We just don't speak and let them know how we're feeling. Because I've had a lot of people who come before me and their families did not know they were feeling this way for years. Where the children were upset, they were going to upset their parents, so they never said anything. So talking to each other and being real about our conversation is very important. And if you see something that's a little off, talking to your relative or friend or your neighbor saying, you used to do this all the time, and now I don't see you anymore. Is everything okay? And also being honest with yourself. Because sometimes if you're lucky, if there's something wrong. You'd figure that out, kind of. And if you feel something's kind of bad going on with you, let someone else know. Being honest with yourself is, I think, is a really good thing if you're afforded that opportunity. And just be honest. That's one of the hardest things I think everybody has to deal with. Being honest with yourself and with your family and your friends, so that whatever happens, but people know about it. There's no shame. No shame in being honest with yourself, with your family.
That's an amazing answer. And the city of New York is obviously incredibly lucky to have you do what you're doing. I could hear, just from speaking with you and getting to know you a little bit, your humanity, your compassion, your sense of fairness, your sense of civic duty. I just want to extend some appreciation to you, and just want to say from the bottom of my heart, thank you for doing what you're doing. I'm hopeful that maybe this can shed some light on an area that myself and I think a lot of attorneys know very little about. And maybe some people out there might find this interesting. I certainly do. So thank you again for speaking with me today.
Thank you for asking me. I really love my job and I'm grateful that I can just do this every day. Thank you so much.
Thanks. All right, Eli. I think that's good on the recording. Judge Perry, that was amazing.
Yeah, that was
Thank
terrific.
you.
You truly are an inspirational person.
Thank you for listening to this episode of the New York City Bar Association podcast. Opinions expressed are those of the speakers and not necessarily of the City Bar. If you enjoyed this podcast, please like and subscribe wherever you listen. Find more City Bar podcasts on Apple, Spotify, YouTube Music, iHeart, or at our website at www.nycbar.org/podcasts. Be sure to check out This Lawyer's Life, a professional development podcast where we talk with lawyers about seizing opportunities, learning lessons the hard way, and about what makes them tick. And don't miss Building Belonging, a podcast that embraces authentic conversations about DEIB solutions by amplifying the most marginalized voices in the legal industry and exploring spaces others dare not. This podcast was produced and edited by Eli Cohen.